sir. It's time to go.
Good evening.
How's everybody?
Yes, sir. It's about 6 o'clock. We will go ahead and prayer. Yes. Father in heaven, we thank you right now for your goodness and your mercy. We love you for just being God and the God that you are, slow to anger, swift to mercy. We pray right now, Father, for this country. We pray for this county, this city, this state. And we pray for those that are standing in harm's way right now. We ask you to bless us as we go and try to do what's best for the citizens of this county. We thank you now for what you're going to do and what you've done thus far. And we bless your holy name now. Father, and as we make these decisions, let them be good decisions. Decisions that we can live with. And let it be pleasing in your sight. This we ask in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Line unmuted.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first thing on the agenda is the conference in effort to protect the public and the Board of County Commissioners. The conference line has been set up to accommodate community access to the meeting. The conference line number is 1-917-900-1022. The access code is 32347 #. This is not a toll-free number, and it may be subject to long-distance charges according to your distant plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comment, please follow instructions. If you wish to speak, please dial 5. The moderator will unmute the line when your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address, and you will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. This meeting will also be live streamed on the Taylor County Board of County Commissioners Facebook page. If you wish to view the meeting on Facebook, you must have a Facebook profile. Search under the Taylor County Board of County Commissioners and you can view the meeting at 6 p.m. The Facebook live stream will not be monitored for questions or comments. Please call the conference line number if you wish to speak. With that being said, I believe we have a minute agenda. We have 2 items, Ms. Wanda.
Just one item, sir.
This one? Okay, we need to have a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, the motion second, all in favor? Okay. All right. The first item on the agenda is the board to hold a public hearing set for this date at 6 p.m. or soon after as possible on the passage of a proposed ordinance which will amend the ordinance number 2020-02, special event regulations, concert exemption, Steinhatchee River Chamber of Commerce for nonprofit groups and the county-sponsored events, providing a 30-day notice. All right. Do we need to read that by title only in the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bishop, do I hear a reading by title?
Hold a second. Let me explain something.
Okay.
Number one, you can read the whole thing, or you can make a motion to read it by title only.
Okay.
Motion to read by title only.
Motion second, all in favor?
Okay.
That's right.
An ordinance of Taylor County, Florida, which amends ordinance number 2020-02 to exempt the Steinhatchee River Chamber of Commerce, nonprofit groups, and county sponsors events in the county, providing that such groups notify the county of their sponsor at least 30 days prior to the holding of the event, providing a savings clause and providing for conflict with other ordinance and providing an effective date.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, could we also include the Taylor County Chamber of Commerce in that English, or to write up there?
Well, we certainly could. It says, I think it says here that it, and other nonprofit groups, so I think that would include the
County
chamber.
sponsored event.
Yeah, it would include them, but if you feel like you more, that you want them named, we can certainly do that. And it wouldn't necessitate another hearing, because that's what public hearings are for, and we can just add it to it and I can retype it as a practical matter.
Do you need that in a motion?
Yes.
If anybody else wants to discuss that, it's just in an effort not to.
I think we should add the Taylor County Chamber as well.
Taylor County Chamber?
Okay, and none other nonprofit groups, or just the chamber?
Well, I mean, I think we just add, or mention them by name, and then leave the nonprofit groups in there, just so we don't, put anybody in disadvantage.
That's a
And
motion.
what I'm doing here is I'm just adding it here by hand, but I'm gonna also retype it for it. That the Steinhatchee, on section 1, that the Steinhatchee River Chamber of Commerce and Taylor County Chamber of Commerce and other nonprofit groups and county-sponsored events are exempt from the requirements of ordinance number 2020-02.
Okay,
Now, Mr. Chairman, what you need to do, it's a public hearing, so
it's now open, right?
now open, but I think Commissioner English had a question.
I just had public, probably comments that.
Yeah, we're doing that right now.
I got you.
Okay.
Okay, any comments from the public?
Yes.
Who we got?
Number 0992.
0992? Speak.
Yes, this is, Dawn Perez from the Perry Taylor County Chamber of Commerce. I was going to request that you include us in that exemption. So that's all I was gonna ask.
Okay. Another one? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
I believe you have someone to speak at the window.
Okay,
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Pam Wessels with the Steinhatchee River Chamber.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say thank you for taking our concerns into consideration and amending this ordinance so we can continue with the Taylor Craft Festival. As you know, it's become a vital part of our community and a good source of income for our businesses in between scallop seasons. So it is quite necessary, and we appreciate you amending the ordinance.
okay, thank you, ma'am. Then, there's another one?
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Is there anybody else that wants to speak?
Nope.
So we close this public hearing. Now we have a vote on roll call?
You have a motion, a second, and then a roll call vote.
Okay, yeah, do I get a motion?
Second.
Then motion second, roll call.
Let me tell you how we do that.
Okay, go ahead.
We don't want to take any of the job that the clerk has to do away from the clerk.
All right, name, please.
All right, so just to be clear, I've got a motion to adopt the ordinance with adding the Taylor County Chamber of Commerce.
Right, that's-
Okay. All right, so, Commissioner Newman, yea or nay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner English,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Dents.
Yes.
Thank
Okay, that's the way it's going to be done?
Y'all done good.
Okay.
Chairperson. Just if I may, Gary, I believe that the chamber is named the Perry Taylor Chamber of Commerce.
And then also, we're gonna do.
No, we got you on here.
Okay.
I got you on here.
Okay, with that being said and done, go to number 5. vote to hold a public hearing set for this day at 6:05 PM or soon after. If possible, on the passage of proposed ordinance amending comprehensive plan and submittal of amendment resolution from the evaluation and appraisal report to the Department of Economic Opportunity, DEO. Okay. That's the public hearing. Do I hear that we read it by title only?
Motion.
The motion is second, read by title only. Mr. Bishop.
Okay. Yes, sir. An ordinance of Taylor County, Florida, amending the Taylor County Comprehensive Plan relating to an amendment to the text and future land use plan map series of the Taylor County Comprehensive Plan pursuant to an application CPA 19-01 by the Board of County Commissioners and the objections, recommendations, and comments report issued by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity on December 3rd, 2019, under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 Florida statutes as amended, providing for amending the text and future land use plan map series of the comprehensive plan based upon an evaluation completed by the county to reflect the changes in the state requirements pursuant to section 163.3191 Florida statutes as amended, providing severability, repealing all ordinance in conflict, and providing an effective date.
This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone to speak for? No phone? No number? No one from the public? So we bring this to a close. We need a motion to adopt or reject. To
Well,
adopt?
You're asking us to have comments too.
Okay.
Maybe any of the commissioners have comments.
Okay, do any commissioner have a comment? Now we go through the motion.
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second.
All right.
Roll.
We got
All in favor?
No. Roll call.
Roll call. Okay.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner English,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gaines.
Yes.
You got it.
Okay. We go through number 6 through 15 on the consent agenda. Have you all looked at the consent agenda? We approve the consent agenda. Is there nothing you want to get off and discuss?
I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion second, we approve the consent agenda. Roll call, please. All in favor? All right, we're moving right along. Number 16, public request, Mr. Hugh Thomas. The executive director to appear to present payments in lieu of taxes in the overview of the Swanee River Management District. Mr. Hugh Thomas, is you?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening.
Hope everyone's doing well this evening.
Okay.
Bringing greetings from the Water Management District, our governing board there. Certainly locally, Richard Schwab, who continues to serve on our governing board. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Appreciate you all meeting like this, allowing me to come in and make a presentation. I do have a presentation for a payment in lieu of taxes, a check from the county, as we know on an annual basis. I'm thankful to the legislature for approving that money, and allowing us to work with our counties on that. A little bit of information, as you see in the handouts before you. I think Tim has prepared the PowerPoint for this, and he's actually, Tim Alexander, many of you may know him. He was county manager over in Dixie County. He recently came to work, actually last month. He started work with us at the district as our community affairs manager. So you'll be seeing him on a regular basis, visiting our county governments and working with them. Glad to have him on board. Got an excellent hire there. Okay. But a little information about the district itself. as you may or may not be aware, but the district's actually made up of all or part of 15 counties. And it's actually a little over 7,600 square miles. Geographically, we are the smallest district in the state. But certainly from a resource perspective, we like to think that we have the best resources in the state. We've got over 400 documented springs, and known as the Springs Heartland here in this part of Florida. And that's the greatest concentration of springs of anywhere in the U.S. So we're certainly blessed with abundant fresh water in our part of the state. And we're made up of 13 river basins within our district itself. And so we are truly very blessed. The district oversees water supply planning, and certainly water quality, as well as working to alleviate flooding and implement flood protection, and then restoration of our natural systems and maintenance with that. And certainly the check that I'll be presenting tonight is for working towards that restoration and protection of our resources, whether it be through conservation easements, or through simple purchases of key properties to protect the resources. The district relies upon a number of funding sources, some of which are relative to Springs grants. I know working with the county here locally, we've implemented some Springs grants over the years here. Out at the Rosehead Park, I believe, was a grant a few years ago anyway, to do some restoration work there as well. I mean, we've been very blessed, both the legislature and the governor, in approving funding for the Springs Heartland here. This year, 2020, we actually received a little over $11 million in Springs grants for protecting leaks around the state. Additionally, last year, for the first year in a number of years, we received alternative water supply funding of about $4.5 million. Some of that goes to our communities for projects improving efficiencies, water supply efficiencies. Some of it goes to our ag producers in conserving water, working with it. And then we have our what's called our Regional Initiative Valuing Environmental Resources, or we call it our River Grant Program, which typically are grants that we work with our communities, whether it be on water quality projects, it could be on flooding projects, could be on water supply projects, to implement and try to put projects in place that will help save water. In fact, one of them, a recipient of that this year, is actually the Taylor Coastal Water and Sewer District project that we've got. It's a little over $100,000, but it'll actually be to install some master valves on their systems there, to where they can actually determine which systems are efficient, which ones may have leaks in them, and be able to take and make the changes and improvements to those systems. We're eager to get that project underway. Also, in the part of the Lower Swanee National Wildlife Refuge, we received some federal funding to get that project on the ground with about $350,000. There, we're looking at restoration of some hydrologic conditions there, looking at the potential impacts that some of the roadways have on street flow, or sheet flow rather, and managing the water down in that part of the district itself. We also continue to work with our ag producers through our Ag Grants program, and we've worked with some of the ag producers in the county over the years to implement new technology to help conserve and save water, as well as to improve water quality, utilizing fertilizer more efficiently with it. Another program area that we have within the district is our minimum flows and minimum water levels. Currently, we are in the process of completing the reevaluation of the lower Santa Fe and the Ishpeming River minimum flow and minimum water level. We've completed the peer review portion of that project and developed a report associated with that. We anticipate we'll be bringing to our board in January that minimum flow, MFL, as we call them, and presenting to them on it. We'll be moving on to the Upper Swanee and then also to the Middle Swanee, slated for next year, and looking at that minimum flow and minimum water level. Critical to our area also is our water supply planning effort. It's part of the responsibility of the district to provide a clean and abundant water source going into the future. We look out over a 20-year horizon and look at projected growth and try to determine how can we have the water that will allow for that growth to occur. Whether it be public supply, whether it be industrial, whether it be agricultural, across all of our water user sectors. And so, with our water supply planning effort, we have developed what are called as water supply planning regions, planning areas. And our board adopted what's known as the Eastern Planning Region, which extends from the far eastern boundary of the district over to the Suwannee River. And then our western supply, which takes from the Suwannee River all the way to the district boundary to the west. And we are working with our communities within those areas to look at what projected growth is over that planning horizon, and then also what the amount of water that will be needed. And we primarily rely upon groundwater, and in those areas where we have constraints on available groundwater, what can we help them to do to develop alternative water supply areas or to improve efficiencies in their water use within those areas, hence the Taylor Coastal Project that I mentioned earlier, looking at growth along there. As a water supply, we have a water supply planning timeline is one of the slides as well. Looking at that, that's been adjusted slightly due to the pandemic and some of the schedules with it, but we still are undergoing, as identified there on that slide, the schedules and the efforts associated with those schedules going forward. And my last slide is looking to the future. Certainly water quality with the Basin Management Action Plan that the Department of Environmental Protection is in the process of implementing on the Suwannee, and then certainly they've got one on the Wassissa and in the Santa Fe Basin also, and they're continue to develop that. So along those lines, we look at nutrient reduction technology. We're primarily agriculture in this part of the state, and so we work heavily with our ag producers on trying to be more efficient and develop projects and technology that'll help them apply that fertilizer more efficiently, possibly to use less of it if at all possible, to prevent leaching through our soils, our sandy soils. Also doing septic to sewer conversions. A number of projects that we've had with that, as well as piloting new projects. And overall, we have been able to work with the Department of Environmental Protection to enhance and expand our water quality monitoring network so that we can further identify areas that we need to do work in. And with that, I'll be glad to entertain any questions the board may have. And I've got a check that I'd like to present to the chairman tonight.
We're going to speak. Thank you for the $2 million you're bringing to the table.
Glad we can help out.
With that being said, any questions or comments from Mr. Thomas?
We had applied for a spring grant one time to work on some of our flooding when we have high water times.
Yes,
So
sir.
y'all got some more programs coming up where
We
we
do.
can apply on.
Yes, sir, we do. It probably, and what I would encourage to do is to work with our project team. Pat Webster is the director over that group, and he leads up that effort. And certainly, we'll give him a call and talk to him about what you have in mind on that.
Right.
And certainly Pat he's a valuable resource, because if it's not appropriate to fit under a Springs grant, it may be more appropriate to fit under a River grant or an AWS alternative water supply grant. And there's a host of other funding pots that, while we may not have it in-house at the district, we certainly are aware of those and would help make application on it.
We got several flooding projects in all of our districts, really, that needs working on, so we can all work into that direction, applying for some of those grants.
Be glad to help out.
What kind of timeline is there for application?
Typically, they work on an annual basis, an annual cycle. The Springs grant, we actually have the submission for the Springs grant, and I know Pat has done outreach in working with the counties and community governments on letting them know what the schedule is. Our Springs grants are actually due to the district next week. We typically review each of those projects, do follow up with the applicant on it to answer any questions, to make it as good a proposal as possible. And then for the spring grants, we generally submit them to the Department of Environmental Protection in March, April timeframe.
But you were there mid-December.
We need that for the spring grants, we would, mid-December. There are some options at times that, for a variety of different reasons, the Department of Environmental Protection may have some money left over, that they then would come back in the spring and ask us if we had any additional projects. So by all means, don't let the schedule of next week inhibit you from submitting a proposal, because if we can't get it into this cycle, we can work it into the subsequent cycles as well. Or there may be another funding pot that we can draw from. Okay, with no other questions? Mr. Chair, I'd like to present a check for $16,609 to the county, and we appreciate y'all working with us and being a great partner.
Okay, well, we appreciate that.
We sure appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Any no questions, Mr. Thomas? Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all very much. If I don't see you before, y'all have a good Christmas and New Year's. Also, thank you very much.
If you gentlemen have any needs, any questions, something we can help you with, contact with Pat, and make sure you get the information, please give me a call.
Thank you. We'll do it.
Okay. That being said, we go to number 17. The board to consider appointment of 2 members to the Taylor County Development Authority.
How do you expect me to do that when I'm way, all the way over here, when I used to be over there? We'll do our best.
No, sir. No, sir.
There's 4 in the packet, I guess.
There was, but the fourth one did not submit an application, just a resume. Thank you.
So we need to go ahead and rank these and sign them.
Yes, you need to, let's go over this for y'all,
Okay.
how we do this, okay? Of course, the day is 12/7/2020, that's today's date. You print your name on the commissioner, and then you sign the signature. And then you rank the applicants as follows. The best applicant is 1, the second would be 2. So you can rank them from 1 to 10. I think you gave me a ranking, you didn't give me the total.
No, sir, I didn't make one of those, I'm sorry.
We don't have one?
No, sir.
Okay, well, we'll figure out something.
Okay.
So the highest number,
1 is the best,
okay.
then 2 would be the next best, 3. So, and you're only picking, and there'll only be 2 that will, but we've got 3 applicants, but there'll be 2 that'll be picked by y'all. Generally, what happens is you turn those in, to me, and then I'm the mathematician.
That's,
I got them all? Yeah. Usually what happens is, y'all go ahead with other things while I do this higher math stuff, okay?
I think you got one more.
personally deliver this thing.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And it's not post guy's fault, it's mine.
All right. We have,
You only voted for two.
You said 1 and 2.
Well, usually you do vote for.
okay, I didn't vote for the two.
You voted for 2 as well, you said, didn't you?
Let me just hand these back to y'all.
They failed
Said you
to-
was bad petition. We pass these back out. Vote for 3 individuals, please.
I did.
Okay, sir. Here, Mr. Chairman.
You did it in red, how about that?
All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
You got mail?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna write this, the one I'm gonna put on the top of this score sheet, okay? And then I'll be able to figure out.
Okay, we'll go to 18, county staff items. The one I need to go ahead and read that.
Yes, sir, but
Yeah.
Lori Wiggins is here to give her presentation, to
Who?
review the, Lori Wiggins is
She's
here.
here?
Yes, sir, to
Okay.
review the audit.
Vote to consider approval of the 4-H Foundation, review and request the release of 4-H funds for the foundation as agendas by Lori Wiggins, Taylor County Extension Coordinator. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in front of you, you should have a copy of the Taylor County 4-H Foundation review. And it was prepared by Richard Glover, who's a CPA from a firm in Tallahassee that we've been using for quite a few years, just because we, number one, could not find anyone local to do it, nor could we afford them. So we switched to having a review versus an audit because the county gives the 4-H Foundation $10,881, and it wasn't fiscally responsible to take almost half of that money and have it put towards an audit. And the audit was gonna start costing around $5,000. So it was approved by the board to have a review. So if you have any questions, it's pretty straightforward. Just for some of the new commissioners, when I started about 23 years ago, Community Friends was dissolving at the time, and they gave us their $25,000. And myself and Mr. Olson worked on taking those funds and investing them. So that's where that investment actually comes from. So we work with Edward Jones, and we do not spend the investment except for college scholarship is what is dispersed from that investment line, and that's given to 4-H graduating seniors. So at this point, we have not had to use those funds. We've been able to invest, and as you can see, make some a little bit of money. So that's kind of where that investment comes from. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions from Lori Wiggins?
No, Mr. Chairman. No question.
No questions. I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Wiggins.
So what I would like, so once it's approved, is where I can put a recommendation letter in for disbursement of this coming year's fund. And one thing you will note on here, there wasn't tons of expenditures since March, but of course we know because of the pandemic. And this was our first summer in about 28 years. We had not had summer day camp face to face. Now, we did offer a lot of virtual day camp, but so the expenditures there that we normally would spend on that camping program are still there. So the good thing is hopefully if we get to have those camps this summer, we can offer multiple scholarships versus what we were able to offer previously. So I do want to ask for the disbursement, so I can put in the disbursement for the funds that come in. Unless you ask for a motion for that, Lawanda, or not. Ma'am, to have those funds dispersed.
Yes, we'll need a motion.
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 Second.
All right, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You got it?
Okay, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your support of the extension in general, we appreciate it.
Okay, good work.
Good evening.
Order number 19, board to consider approval of emergency medical services, EMS/EMS county grant application resolution and request for the grant funded distribution to be submitted to the Florida Department of Health EMS County Grant Program as agendaed by Melanie Cox, grant writer.
This is a recurring grant application that we submit every year. The only difference this year is that we, instead of submitting on behalf of Doctors Memorial Hospital, we are submitting on behalf of our fire department for equipment, for medical equipment for them. There is a resolution that will have to be adopted, as well as the application will have to be approved.
So you're gonna have to bring that resolution back.
We have it.
You have it?
It's part of the packet, yes, sir.
We need a motion to read the resolution.
Yes, sir.
Right, motion. And a second, okay. Kyle Loney?
Yes, 19.
I got it right here. It's one of those resolutions that doesn't really have a title,
Yeah.
so I just kind of read the first, paragraphs,
Okay.
if that's okay with y'all. Whereas the state of Florida Department of Health has established the County Emergency Medical Services Grant Program, and whereas Taylor County, Board of County Commissioners is eligible to receive an award under this program to improve the county's pre-hospital emergency medical services system.
We need to go ahead and adopt it.
Need a motion
To adopt.
to adopt it. And this is one that you don't have to do a roll call on this.
Okay.
Motion to adopt.
Is that motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Second. Go to item number 20.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairperson, can y'all approve the application as well on item number 19?
Okay.
Motion to approve the application.
Take my man.
Okay.
Second.
Motion second, we approve the application as well. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's really hard.
I'm total, whenever y'all ready, I can tell you.
Want to go back and get the total? Yes, sir. Who will be our two people for?
James Reed and Blair Beatty.
Well, made. Okay.
And if ever anybody wants to look at them, I give these to the clerk, and the clerk keeps them.
Thank you.
And you can check it too. Like I said, it was hard now.
We go to number 20. Board to consider approval of local agency program agreement to construct sidewalk along the old Victor Highway, and to consider adoption of a resolution authorizing the chairperson to accept such agreement on behalf of the commission as agendaed by the county engineer.
Commissioner, this is for, as it says, the construction phase. We've already finished the design phase of this project. This is under the local agency program, so these dollars are federal dollars that are coming to our community. Once we get this agreement, this is, as I said, for funding of the construction. I will bring back some of the design and specifications for this project for your approval so that we can advertise.
Do we have to approve this resolution?
Yes, sir.
Right, there's a resolution.
Okay. Do I hear we read by title only?
Motion. Second.
Motion.
I don't know whether I can get all this out, it's so long.
Well, okay.
Take a break.
Old Dixie Highway Sideway Signature Authorization. That's the title, y'all.
Okay.
I hear a motion, we accept that?
Motion.
Second.
Motion second. Yes, sir. Roll call? You got a roll call?
Yes.
Not a roll call, is it? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Number 20.
And then was there an agreement you needed? Was there an agreement to?
The actual item is for approval of the agreement and approval of a resolution, which is a signature resolution. So it's supposed to be both of those. Yes, sir.
Okay, we need an agreement. That's the one we need to approve now.
I believe it's included in that motion, isn't it? We're done.
Usually we have two motions, usually.
Motion to approve the agreement.
There you go.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That it?
It is, and I'm here for the next one too.
Okay, go ahead. That's 2180, that's the addition.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Hyde. Do you want to start this, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Okay, so item number 20A is essentially an update to the board about the Foley Cutoff Road project. As most of you, or probably all of you, are intimately aware, that project has had a lot of difficulties, I guess, to say it nicely, trying to achieve completion for quite some time. The contract itself was originally given a notice to proceed back in March of this year. That was a 145-day construction timeline, and we are well beyond that at this point. Back in July of this year, we began discussions with the contractor, recognizing that there were some construction difficulties that was affecting progress. There were some resolutions that were presented at that meeting, and at that point in time, construction kind of took a little bit more of a positive direction, and things looked good for a very short time. It was very short-lived, and it wasn't too much longer after that construction seemed to be very uncoordinated. We presented additional discussion with the contractor in August, looking for some type of confidence in their abilities to complete the project. And then ultimately, once the contract had elapsed in August 27th, I think it was, on September 28th, we provided a formal notification that we were making a determination that the contractor was in default for lack of performance and progress of the work. When the contractor received that notification, by the end of the week, we had a face-to-face conversation with them with regards to the notification. And at that point in time, the contractor provided what they felt was a plan to achieve completion of the job. We very graciously and generously allowed them to make a written submission. I think we received it on Monday of the following week. And that submission would indicate all of the remaining components of the project as well as milestones throughout to achieve that completion, with the recognition that in the event those milestones weren't achieved, that would constitute a default at that point in time. And in discussion of that, we also made sure that they were abundantly aware that given the fact that we were beyond the end of the approved contract term, that provision for liquidated damages would be assessed going forward to make sure that we at least had sufficient funding to cover our ongoing CEI, or construction engineering and inspection expenses. first of those milestones was on October 9th. And in that milestone, they were to have achieved a certain quantity of completing the road base. On October 8th, we received notification from the contractor that they were requesting permission to allow a second contractor, that being Anderson Columbia, to come in and assist them with completing the roadway work. Given our experience with Anderson and the familiarity of their capabilities, that was a welcome change to the staff. It wasn't but about 3 weeks, I think, while Anderson was out there, they made significant improvement and completion of about 4,000 foot worth of the northern section of the roadway. And it was about that time that Pygott submitted their third pay request. That third pay request had the work completed up through, I think it was, what was it, October 10th? October 11th. And in that, in the review of that, our CEI manager, Mr. Phil Bishop, who's here to my right, with North Florida Professional Services, he reviewed that bill or that application for payment. There were some adjustments that needed to happen to some of their quantities. And then as the final part of that, before remitting that payment, he imposed the liquidated damages up through the date of that invoicing. Once we forwarded that information to the contractor, that being Pygott, they provided a written notification that if the county was going to follow through with their assessment of liquidated damages, they would not be in a position to where they would have sufficient funds to pay their subcontractors and their workers. And because of that, they were going to cease progress and cease pursuit of the project, and then notify Anderson as well that they needed to leave the project also.
What was that date again, please?
That would have been November 4th, I think is right. You can give me a minute, I'll probably find it for you, but anyway, thereabouts. November 4th. Receiving that notification, we accepted it. We accepted it with the understanding that this contract was accompanied in its original execution with a performance bond. That bond says that it binds the surety company to ensure that whether the contractor themselves or some other arrangement is employed, that the project would be finished. Given the difficulties that we've had up to that point, it seems like a much more reasonable solution. Once we made that election and accepted their declaration, it wasn't long after that we received notification from the surety company that they wanted us to have one less opportunity to sit down at a table with the contractor, and they participated via conference call to try to see if there was an opportunity to resolve the project without having to go to the declaration of a default. That conference or that meeting was attended by our council as well as the contractor's council. And in attending that meeting, their council, the contractor's council, Pygott's, brought with them a statement of various allegations and claims that they wanted addressed as part of the project. Most notably in there, they wanted to remove the assessment of liquidated damages and remove the claim of a default because of its implications on their project constructability or project contractability going forward. So we heard everything they had to say, and we have had discussions. I say myself, Ms. LaWanda Conrad, and Mr. Bishop, Phil Bishop. We had a discussion last week in regards to the specifics of the case, the documentation received from their Pygott's counsel, and our expectation of how we felt would be the most amicable way to resolve this issue. What I've handed out to you is what we kind of see as the kind of the bracket of possibilities for this project going forward. There are three options that are indicated there.
Ken,
Yes, sir.
before you do that, do you think it'd be advisable for me to read the letter that was directed toward our administrator on December the 2nd?
Sure.
I think it's important that y'all be aware of this letter. It's a letter from Mr. Steve Sellers, who represents PIGOT. It's addressed to Lawanda, but it was sent to me. I just want to read it to y'all so y'all can understand why they've come up with these options. It says, Dear County Administrator Pemberton, I represent PIGOT Asphalt and Side Work, LLC PIGOT, in relation to its contract with Taylor County for improvements to Foley Cutoff Road. In previous letter, PIGOT made a demand to Taylor County to, 1, pay the outstanding amount of PIGOT's pay application number 3 with no set-off for liquidated damages. 2, require its engineer to make a determination of PIGOT's rights to additional contract time under the contract documents and not in accordance with conflicting FDOT specifications. 3, submit any claim it may have of entitlement to liquidated damage to the engineer for an initial determination so PIGOT can then utilize the dispute resolution provisions of the contract documents. And 4, rescind the notice of default to PIGOT and its surety and submit the issue to the engineer for an initial determination so PIGOT can then utilize the dispute resolution provisions of the contract documents. As of this date, the county has not responded to these demands. This constitutes a continuing material breach of the contract and completely frustrates PIGOT's efforts to perform on the project. I understand we may disagree about this. This letter was written after we had that meeting that Kenneth had just told you about. I appreciate the meeting we had with you and the county engineer, CEI, county attorney, and surety representatives, which was held in the nature of a settlement discussion to the extent allowed by law with a public entity. After that meeting, PIGOT arranged a meeting with its subcontractor, Anderson Columbia, to discuss having it complete the project with the goal of completing in time for the county to not lose its FDOT funding. I understand the CEI also met with Anderson Columbia. I learned late yesterday that Anderson Columbia will agree to contract directly with the county and complete the work in time for the county to save the FDOT funding, and will do so for the price of about $991,000. PIGOT proposes in settlement of its dispute with the county that 1, the county pay PIGOT the full amount of pay request number 3, which was approved as representing work performed, plus its accumulated retainage. 2, mutually terminate the contract between PIGOT and the county, which also served as a release of PIGOT's surety, and withdraw the mutual declarations default and assessment of liquidated damages. And 3, reimburse PIGOT's $5,000 for its attorney fees in this matter. That this will pave the way for the county to contract directly with Anderson Columbia and complete the project. Please respond to this settlement proposal at your earliest convenience. I have not responded to that as of yet. Neither has Ms. Pemberton.
And it's good that he brings up some points in there, because I should have continued and brought those up as well. As one facet of what he discussed was, we have a reimbursement agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation for this project. The project is compensated based on a portion of those funds coming from DOT and the remaining portion coming from local dollars. That agreement is due to expire at the end of this month. There is about $500, and I think it may be $508,000 remaining to request for reimbursement on that. So we're kind of up against a timeline here on trying to be able to even finish that much of the job between now and the end of the year to kind of save that reimbursement. Understanding that, I reached out to DOT and told them what was going on, make sure they were aware of the current situation and the contention in this project. And fortunately, last week, we were able to receive a supplemental agreement which extends our funding reimbursement deadline to April 30th of this year, of next year. part of the item, discussion of this item, I will request that the board accept that and approve that supplemental agreement, extending that date. That's the only provision that's extended. It too has a resolution to require, to be read, authorizing the chairman to be able to sign that agreement. That being said, as Mr. Conrad mentioned in there, the contractor, after the last meeting, they elected to meet with Anderson Columbia and kind of ask them, what is the cost for you to finish the remaining components of the job to provide a completed job? And that was the $991,000 figure that you heard. To date, we've incurred an additional $36,000 thereabouts of CEI oversight since expiration of the original construction contract term. Realistically, there's in the neighborhood of 60 more days or so worth of work being efficient. So what I did is I tried to say, if I were to look at the CEI's current contract rate and maybe project that out 90 days, what would be that total expense? That total then for expected CEI expense is $108,000. The dollars that we have remaining with the contract, the construction contract, after we take and compensate for pay application number 3, including release of retainage on payment number 1 and 2, deducting for the appropriate liquidated damages, it gets us in the neighborhood of just under $800,000. So if you take the 991 and the 108, and then take away from that the 800,000, it's clear that if we were to be responsible for the balance of the cost going forward, that the county would be expected to incur an additional $300,000. Now, you might gasp at that. And part of this is somewhat of an order of magnitude to compare with the way the original bids came in. If you might recall, the bids when they were received, Pygott obviously was the lowest responsive bidder with their DOT pre-qualification. The next responsive bid was Anderson's, and that was at $300,000, here over $300,000 more. So it kind of gives you a realm of reason with what they see as the balance due on the job to finish it and what they've estimated, that they're in the same ballpark of what they had originally estimated it from the beginning. And he being Anderson Columbia, Mr. Tony Williams, has spoken not only with the contractor, but he also spoke with our CEI and kind of got that assurance of the remaining quantities left to be completed. He's since double-checked those against his original bid documents, and feels comfortable with this number for us. So it appears to be at least a good starting point for us to discuss which direction we want to go moving forward. And that's where, if it's okay now, I'll discuss the 3, is that to move forward, we really felt that there was kind of just a few options there for us to consider. The first of those is, as I said, we have a performance bond on this contract. So we could quite easily say, we've provided you notification, Mr. Surety Company, we want you to enforce resolution and complete this project. That requires no additional funding from us. We can actually seek to recoup all quote-unquote damages costs under that bond, which is inclusive of legal fees as well as our oversight expenses, as well as the liquidated damages, which is what we would use to pay the CEI expenses. The unfortunate aspect of that is the surety company is afforded within the bond quite a bit of time. That time may be as much as 2 years from the date of notification. That's a long time to let it sit there. And we recognize that you're going to lose the work effort that you've made if it were to sit in that situation. The second one is, in the contract provisions, there is an Article 10.2. It allows assignment of interest of a contractor to another contractor. This one has some merit, and what it would do is, what we propose is to request as part of our offer back to Pygott is that they assign all of their interest to Anderson Columbia, and that we request that the surety endorse that assignment, and it's under section 1 of the contract, of the construction bond, that allows for, or binds the contractor and the surety and its successors and assigns. So under that terminology, we should be able to make that transition from Pygott to Anderson. And then request that the surety endorse that new contract with Anderson, come up with a new cost for completion, which should be that 991, a new timeline, and then just move forward with the balance of the contract with those additional costs still being borne by the surety company. That one is probably considerably quicker. Presumably, if we could get everyone to buy into that, I would think it would just be the matter of the procedural and the logistics to get everybody on the same page and making agreements. That still has us paying Pygott for the balance of their retainage on payments 1, 2, and 3, plus whatever monies are due for pay application number 3. But I would only endorse that if, prior to us making that payment and accepting this assignment, is if Pygott were to release and provide a waiver of any rights or claims they may have to this contract. That's the only reason that we would accept moving forward this way. And then the last one is kind of the, we'll take and look at things as if, how much possibility do we have of ensuring our success from a litigation standpoint of enforcing the surety to kind of do what he's supposed to do? And that would be to terminate the contract for convenience. With adequate notification, we can actually tell them that it isn't working out, we have our own reasons, we want to terminate this contract, we will pay you for everything you've done up through today, and based on the contract terms and provisions, and we will separate and go our ways. What that does is it will release, assuming they would accept that, because that too would be only accepted when it was accompanied by a release accepted from them to receive that last payment, them being the contractor. As well as what it would do is release the surety company of any obligations they may have under the performance bond. And what we feel like that would do is, it's the quickest resolution, but it's a guarantee of at least one of the more expensive options that's on the page. Because what it'll do is, once you separate it from that contract and the surety, is you are accepting the balance of the cost to finish the job. And that's where we're saying in there that, we would true everything up to Pygott, which is about 28 grand, but then that's it. That's a pretty much a given that we've got 300 grand that we're gonna have to absorb. So what I've done is tried to tell you, we can stay the course, force the performance bond to complete the job. Not sure when, not sure how, not sure how much. Don't really care what the cost is because they're going to bear it. 2, if we're not thinking that this is something that we're going to be willing to go and be litigious about, and we think that we would have to pay that cost no matter how it turned out, then let's get some waivers and proceed on finishing the job the way we know we can get it done through a different contractor. So I've given you 3 options. Obviously, you can come up with something on your own, but we kind of tried to narrow down the possibilities to give you guys something to think about, to at least give us some direction so that what you're willing to do, so that we can have a stance to respond back to some of these correspondence, or to see whether or not we need to bring the surety back to the table and tell them, okay, our board has decided we want to pursue this performance bond. So I'm here hopeful that maybe, after consideration of this, you guys may have some insight that you'd be willing to offer.
Mr. Chairman, if I understand, I've got a few questions, if I could ask those. If I understand, this presentation correct, option one is a 2-year time frame, possibly.
Option one, in the performance bond, they have up to 2 years to respond. That's not a given, but obviously that's a possibility.
But they've shown in the past how concerned they are for timelines. Is that a fair
No,
statement?
two different people now. So that the person that has up to 2 years is a surety company. The disregard for timelines has been the contractor.
And during this proposed period, there's the risk of more damage and excessive work that has to be done to repair this site, to get back into the state that it's in today.
Yes, sir. I think it's reasonable to expect that you would lose the investment you have to a certain degree.
So that this cost, even if we wind up paying $300,000+ would be higher than that.
Understand under an option one, those costs are borne by the surety, not by the local.
But this is all a risk depending on where this winds up at.
I'll say that one more time.
So this option puts the liability on the surety company to do their job, what they've been paid or contracted to do. But it also could waive timelines and expose this project to more damage. And quite obviously, there's not going to be any work going on there when all this is happening.
Potentially, you're correct. There is also the opportunity that, knowing that their costs would only increase, it's in the surety's best interest, if they feel he's obligated to this, to move as quickly as he can to minimize that additional cost. He has an obligation up to the contract amount, which is $1 million. He's going to try to work, once he accepts that responsibility under the bond, he's going to work to try to minimize that exposure as much as he can. So do I think he's going to sit on his laurels for 2 years just because it's upsetting us? No, I don't. I think it's going to be in his best interest to move forward with Anderson, who is a contractor familiar with the project, who's already worked on the project, with a known cost versus delaying that out and understanding that he would have 4,000 foot worth of road work that's already been accomplished to have to redo.
And should we forego that to explore option 2 or 3, both of those require cooperation from the contractor to comply with these options, right? A waiver that has to be signed or other agreements.
Yes, sir. Option 2 and 3 will require a concession from the contractor that the only way that we're going to move forward without his liability remaining is if he gives us a waiver.
And have they indicated they'd be willing to do so?
We haven't proposed this to them.
But, should we have some sort of expectation
Yes.
that they would or wouldn't do that?
There is, associated with the declaration of default, there is a significant, typically, there's a significant impact for their project award going forward.
Right.
We feel that that is a notable incentive for them to want to resolve this in a manner that removes them of that liability or that accountability going forward.
Sure.
Option 2, if you keep the surety in it, if there's a way that we can not have a default, I think we'd be willing to. If there is not a way for it to be a default, then so be it.
And that would force option 3.
No. Option 2 still involves the surety.
Which would seem like the better option.
I would think so, yes. Because I think
That's my understanding. If I'm wrong, please let me know.
it's the cheapest option for the surety, if they're still involved. But option 3 is no responsibility for the surety.
Yeah, that, we would bear that
The
responsibility.
risk.
Yes, sir.
If if they, we went ahead and let them do it on number 2, for instance, and it cost us $300,000, it's still gonna cost us $300,000, we're gonna have to come up with $300,000 to finish the job.
Well, Commissioner Mooney, one thing that, Mr. Conrad is still going to be looking into is we want to ensure that if we, let's say we forged ahead with number 2, and we told Anderson that we want you to have Pygott sign the contract to you, and we're going to contract directly with you to finish this out. We just want to make sure that if we follow this route, that we don't waive our rights for claims under the performance bond.
Right, in other words, you wanna get that 300 back
I want
from
it
the
back.
performance bond.
Yes, sir. Number 2 is I'm going to ask to be made whole by the surety, but number 3 says, I don't think I'm going to be made whole, so I'm just going to suck it up.
So in that, if I understand it, would we need to meet again as a board, or could we give the option, to you, and if Pygott would refuse that, then what?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that if you guys reach consensus on what you feel is the most advantageous option, or some combination thereof, then you would allow staff to forward that to the contractor and the surety for resolution. And then it would only be once we reach that resolution or reached an impasse that I think that we would need to come back to you guys. Obviously, if we're just following contract administration and there's no additional out-of-pocket expense for us, I don't know that you guys have a need to make any type of a decision after that. If it's going to be that we fully expect there's going to be $300,000 more additional dollars, I'm going to stand here and tell you or ask you where can I get it from.
Kenneth, now, option 2, we would still have to pay the money up front and then wait for reimbursement if the surety company agrees to that.
If Mr. Conrad tells me that we don't run a risk of losing our right to request reimbursement of that under the terms of the performance bond, I think number 2 is about the best way to move forward, because you preserved your right to make that request or make that claim on the back end versus going all the way to option 3 where you're saying, this is a lost cause, I'm going to eat it anyway.
Right.
So that's what I would prefer.
We'll have to pay the money up front.
And that's why I said, is that possibly $300,000 of local funds needed up front. You know, so that's where we start talking to Danielle and saying, can I release an account, or do I need to show an earmark of this, have reserves, or secondary road paving, things like that, to be able to physically have a dollar to pay people like him and pay the Andersons, even though I'm going to be asking for it sometime later.
You can do the latitude to do that tonight.
I really want you guys to kind of reach consensus on what you feel is the best method. And if you guys collectively say option 2 is the best, then yes, sir, we're going to discuss the money.
Mr. Bishop?
I don't know the
Conrad
answer.
Bishop, excuse me.
Conrad Bishop. I don't know the answer to the question that was posed by Kenneth with regard to the waiver of the performance bond issues. I just don't know that answer. I can try and find out, but I don't know the answer tonight. And I'm sorry I don't, but I don't. And of course, even if I answer, yeah, you got it, then you're going to you could end up in a suit to determine whether we were correct or wrong.
I'm very interested in this project moving forward. I'm certain everybody is, and the residents out there have had quite an experience, as well as staff that's doing the work to try to get this thing moving. So if there's other discussion, I'm willing to hear it, but otherwise, I'm willing to make a motion if we could proceed with option 2.
Well, I'm looking at out there, if you had a storm coming here with 10 or 12 inches of rain right now, you'd lose $100,000 off the bat, wouldn't you? Probably.
Easily.
It would affect it seriously.
Yeah. In other words, they'd have to start back with that, they got rid of the pavement out there, what it looks like, start over and recondition all that.
So it will just further any sort of date of completion that much down the line. So I'm not interested And, I think it's in interest of cost savings and the interest of completing this project as we move forward. So I believe I heard somebody say we need to, adopt this resolution for request of extension.
Ultimately, before we get finished with this, we need to approve that supplemental agreement that allows the DOT reimbursement agreement to be extended to April 30th,
Okay.
including the resolution which allows the chairman to sign on behalf of the commission. That's just a formality that has to happen.
So, sure, could I make a motion to read that by title, Mr. Bishop?
It's not a floor resolution yet.
Yes, sir.
So do we have a motion in the section?
I got a motion.
Okay, got a motion, got a second? Okay, motion and second, all in favor? Go
It's Foley Cutoff Road Widening Resurface Project Supplemental Agreement Number 2, signature authorization.
Motion to adopt.
Before we adopt it, Kim, I always thought when you bought the insurance or whatever you buy it to protect yourself against the contractor, that's what you pay for. Now, I don't feel like nobody if we paid for it, the protection, when the contractor default, he needs to pay up or something. There's somewhere we need to get our money. Or there's no use in even having the contractor.
You mean the insurance?
Yeah, the insurance.
And I don't disagree with you, but I will tell you this, that let's say you have insurance on your automobile.
Yeah.
And you get into a collision with something.
Yeah.
The insurance doesn't just call you and ask you, how much do I need to send you a check for? They send an adjuster out there and they start looking at a way to
Not pay.
meet their obligation, but at the least expense to them.
Okay.
This guy is no different. He's gonna do the same thing with respect to this contract. There are provisions within the performance bond that address some of this. Mr. Conrad is going to look over this to make sure that we don't waive all of our assurances that we can request as much as possible to minimize our loss. I hope there is no loss, I really do, but, you know, my expectation is there will probably be some. But every dollar that we can recoup out of the surety is a dollar we don't have to recoup from our taxpayers.
If we go with option 2, we're gonna have to pay the $300,000+ probably
That's front end.
up front. How, is there a timeline or a time frame that we would potentially see reimbursement? Is there?
I would say that the claims under the terms of this would follow the same timeline that the surety has in being responsive to the original allegation. So I would expect that that could be as much as 2 years down the road. Unless he corrects me.
What you said with number 1 though, they gonna look at the cost it's gonna cost if they wait any period of time to come to it.
I think they're gonna look at that no matter what. So when we say option 2, I think that surety is gonna be in the back of his mind. It's kind of a good thing that the county is willing to go ahead and push forward. My only hesitation is if he gains any wiggle room to leverage us out of the ability or the right to be able to make a claim. I don't want to do that. And if we've lost that right on option 2, then option 2 is off the board and we either need to be doing option 1 or option 3. We either sit back and make them bear the brunt of it, or we realize and say, it ain't gonna work, so we're gonna pay it ourselves.
That's the way I feel. If that doesn't work, we need to go with 1. Let them sleep on it.
Option 1, I think we end up with the.
I'm with you on 2 right now, but if they're not gonna take another chance on us losing that $300,000 altogether, we need.
I think that's what Mr. Bishop's gonna confirm.
And that's all I'm asking for is his confidence that if we were to pursue option 2, he needs more time to look at it. But I was looking for his confidence in option number 2 that we don't lose that right.
Right.
So we could keep the option or we could lose it. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, I understand.
We end up back at option 1, who Ken said it's not in their best interest to let that project rock on, but we could potentially sit there, the road could sit there and no work done for 2 years.
Well, it could. It could be tied up longer than that, probably, if it went to court, back and forth, you know, and them people out there, they need a road.
I'm interested in the most, expedited process that we can complete this project, and I'm certain that the staff is as well. I'm not saying anybody's trying to delay that, but, you know, our residents in the middle of a pandemic, and as well, what work's going on out there, have been exposed to, let's call a less than pleasant experience. So nonetheless, I want to see that done efficiently and effectively, but the most economical way at the same time. We're not just trying to throw golf in the wind. But in that, we still need an extension, I believe, for these funds.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the motion I made just a while ago.
Okay, we got a motion to extend or to get.
The funding
So we adopt this resolution, which gives us the extension.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
okay, the motion second that.
Motion to approve the supplemental agreement and the resolution. Or unless you want to. Okay, so approve the agreement first,
Okay.
and then approve the resolution which says you can sign it on behalf of everybody else.
Motion to approve the agreement.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we got another one, right?
The resolution.
Which one is that?
Allow the chairman to sign on behalf of the board.
The one you read?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the resolution, and Mr. Conrad read. Do I have a motion for that?
Motion.
Second.
Motion second. Ready to vote? All in favor? Okay. What else you need? We going to number 2?
I need a crystal ball.
Yeah. Do we need to ask for a funding source now?
Yeah, if we're going to pursue option 2, and Mr. Conrad, let's say tomorrow sometime, tells us that, guys, I think we're in good ground on option 2, we're not waiving any rights that we have, let's forge ahead and let's reach out to Anderson, get them back on board, get them moving forward with this contract, and reach out to Pikett, get them squared away, make sure they would assign this to Anderson, and then obviously, at some point, we're gonna need to establish some money. It doesn't have to happen today necessarily, because I've got enough funds to carry me through at least $500,000. But before I get to the end, I'm going to need 300,000. So if it's something that you think you know a good source tonight, that's great. If you don't, you might can flesh out a better place.
Well, one possibility is to take it from our 1-cent sales tax reserves, because if there's any possibility that the money is going to be tied up for any length of time, that's really that's a safer source as far as I'm concerned, because we have about $2 million in reserves. But we would need approval to move those funds from 1-cent sales tax reserve.
We can come back and do it, we need to.
We can, but
I'd like to make a motion unless there's more discussion. Is there more discussion?
One thing I want to say, let's try to put this group here that causes all these issues on the never list.
We will. Our purchasing policy, excuse me, has a vendor list that there are various items on it that you can, when applicable, you can remove the eligibility for a contractor. And, you know, that is something that unfortunately we would be exercising for this contractor.
I'd like to see that done.
Yes, sir.
I would agree. So, if I'm clear on this, the second option is the most timely fashion that this could be completed.
That's it.
Under the agreement, and it doesn't waive our rights per the inspection of the attorney. No for Mr. Bishop.
The quickest one is 3.
Well, 2 and 3 are the same quickness.
But I thought when we signed 3, we have no
Sure.
right to that.
That's why he said number 2.
All right. Well, I said number 2.
So, if I could, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with option 2. And we can, I'll make the motion if we need to move the 1-cent reserve money for funding.
$300,000.
Yes, sir.
We need to put a cap on that.
Yes, yes,
$300,000.
please.
Up to $304,000,
Depending on what Mr. Bishop find out.
and that would be contingent on Mr. Bishop's findings as far as security.
Can I just ask, just to make sure, did you want to add anything before they actually make a motion? You don't have to, I was just making sure I didn't miss anything.
No, the only thing that I would add is that by virtue of your agreement to extend that grant, it's still your $500,000 at DOT, is not, that is withstanding, has to be obligated and spent by that April 30th deadline. So whatever we do, we can't extend the project beyond that point. So we don't want to take option one and just sit back and litigate this thing for that length of time, or you'll lose the $500,000 again. So whatever we do, we need to have some resolution of, or completion of the project by April 30th, so that we don't lose DOT's contribution.
Completion of enough of the contract.
That's right.
Doesn't have to be all of it, just enough.
So, I mean, I'll hold up on the motion, but Mr. Bishop, Mr. Conrad, how long do we expect this investigation to take to know if it's gonna sink or swim?
Well, I'm sitting here reading the bond right now.
Oh, wow, well, let me give you some time, excuse me.
Let me just read it out loud, what I'm reading here. So everybody, it says, when the owner has satisfied the conditions of paragraph 3, now paragraph 3 is when there's a default, okay? The surety shall promptly, and at the surety's expense, take one of the following actions. 4.1. Arrange for the contractor with consent of the owner to perform and complete construction contract. That would be one whoever he contracted with.
And we don't want that one.
We don't want that one. But there's one of these options. 4.2, undertake to perform and complete the construction contract itself through its agents or through independent contractors. Okay, that's 2. Or 3, obtain bids or negotiated proposals from qualified contractors acceptable to the owners for a contract for performance and completion of the construction contract. Arrange for a contract to be prepared for execution by the owner and the contractor selected with the owner's concurrence to be secured with performance and payment bonds executed by a qualified surety equivalent to the bonds issued on the construction contract, and pay to the owner the amount of damages described in paragraph 6 in excess of the balance of the contract incurred by the owner resulting from the contractor's defaults, or waive its right to perform and complete, arrange for completion, or obtain a new contractor, and with reasonable promptness under the circumstances, after investigation, determine the amount for which it may be liable to the owner as soon as practicable after the owner is determined, tender payment therefore for the owner, or deny liability in whole or in part, and notify the owner citing the reasons therefore. Which one do you think they're gonna do? Bill?
I think that's the $6,400 question, is whether or not they're gonna accept any liability for it in its entirety. And that's where, if you take option 1, you're gonna have to force them to number 1, accept that liability. And then you move through the various cases, and quite honestly, based on the tone of the conversations, my perception is that they're gonna deny any liability, at least initially, and that's where you're gonna have to force them to accept that, whether it's through a court order or whatever. Really and truly, my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer by any stretch, don't claim to be, but I feel like that the county can actually take option 3 and then sue the bonding company in court for any of its damages that it incurs with proper notification. Now, we may not be able to default or terminate the contract for convenience, we may still have to, I think you're gonna have to declare a default in order to bring the bonding company to the table, whether it's through, they're voluntarily accepting that liability or forced acceptance through litigation.
But you can't, if you were to accept option 3, your terminating for convenience would negate a declaration of default.
That's right, that's what I'm saying. And Conrad, people can sue for any reason whatsoever, so I think even if you did, terminate for convenience, you still have the option to file suit. Now, whether by virtue of you declaring default or declaring termination for convenience, you've lessened your ability to seek damages from the bonding company. I don't know,
They would use semantics against us on with termination for convenience. It would, you would say terminate for defaults, in option 3.
That's option 2 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why, the contractor, PIGA, doesn't want the surety to have to pay anything is because they're thinking about future surety bonds that they're gonna get, or they're not gonna be able to get a surety company to insure them or bond them.
Looks like they need to come on and do the work then.
So given option 2, that would be in their interest to be prompt about supplying Anderson.
And that's what I mentioned early on, is that if there is any plausible method that we still obligate the surety and don't result in a declaration of default to PIGET, assuming that in exchange for that, they release us of all liabilities and claims, I'd be happy to do that. I'm fine with that. I want them out of our house. I don't, I wish the best for everyone else, but we want them out of our house. But if that can't happen, then I think, and I'm not an attorney either, is that I would expect to preserve our rights going forward to seek restitution for this, is that we would have to declare a default and bind the surety as part of this contract.
Again, I'm going down a river I haven't gone before in the many years that I've been a county attorney or a government attorney. This is the first surety bond problem I've had. And I just know insurance companies. I do know insurance companies. And they're not going to just voluntarily, without a fight, pay this money. There's not, I don't think. Bill?
I agree. They're gonna fight you all the way right to the wire.
We don't use them no more.
Well, I guess you could, well, if you've got a grant to do this, the grant people are gonna require you to have a performance bond, right?
So the statutes.
For the statute.
Okay.
But you do have, not to interrupt, but you do have some latitude whether, because the way it's phrased isn't a bond that's acceptable to the owner.
Yeah.
So this Westfield Insurance Company, if another contractor proposes to provide you a bond from Westfield Insurance, you don't have to accept that bond. You can tell them as a condition of their contract or your acceptance of their bid, no, this is not an acceptable bond. You need to provide me with another bond from somebody that, so you do have some latitude there if you don't have a good experience with these guys.
6 of one, half dozen of another, though.
But that's right, you get in bed with the insurance company either way.
So, if I understand this, option 2 would keep the surety, and it would also enable us to move forward with Anderson Columbia or PIGET's consensus or agreement.
Yes, sir.
They seem to be willing to.
I think if they can see a way that they get out of it scot-free, I think they will be very willing to accept that.
So then the question still remains, if we take this action, that it waives any rights of the county.
Right, yes, sir.
That's number two.
Yes, sir.
So, again,
He's saying, we're questioning whether it does, in number 2. We know it does in number 3.
Yeah.
it takes all.
Questioning whether it
But
does.
he's gonna do some.
That's correct, yes, sir.
So we can still make a decision that attaches the constraint that our surety be maintained as long as we proceed with option 2.
Yes, sir.
And that would minimize the risk for loss. And also, it would afford the possibility of moving forward to completion.
Right.
But it wouldn't, if I understand this right, come with any higher costs than the $304,000.
Yes, sir.
On the surety bond, is there a cap, do they have a cap on it?
The value of the contract, $1 million.
$1,023,000.
Right.
So, I'm going to make a motion that we seek an option 2, allow Mr. Conrad this latitude to explore possibility of keeping surety and not exposing the county to more risks.
Second that much.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
All right. Fun begins.
Now, should we come to that place, would you guys want to come back to the board? Does it need to be another option?
All right. So let's just deal with it now.
Okay.
So if Mr. Conrad does a little bit of review tomorrow, maybe the next day, and says, you know, there's sufficient case history out there that in doing this action, you're gonna, if you forge ahead and you complete it yourself, you're gonna waive all rights to request reimbursement. Then, if that's the case, is this board willing to pursue option 1? And option 1 would be, we're going to push it into the hands of the surety company and say, live up to your obligation, finish it under the terms of the performance bond. Or are you going to say, well, obviously this isn't working, so we know we're going to have to pay this kind of money, and we're really not feeling comfortable that we're ever going to be able to recoup this, so let's go ahead and just pay it on our own bond. That's your 2 extremes. So if 2 doesn't work, which way do you want to go?
It would.
I wanna go with number 1, if it's gonna work. Cause if you go number 3, it's gonna cost you $300,000 and something no matter what.
You won't get it back.
You never get it back. That's my opinion. I'm no attorney either, but that's what it's looking like to me.
I think so too. I mean, I think you're accepting that $300,000 cost if you go through.
Well, you're actually getting the $300,000, you're getting what Anderson originally did anyway.
Yes, sir.
So that's the shortfall, the reason this bunch is doing what they're doing. They're going in the hole doing this job. No
Probably.
doubt. You know, so I go with number 1 if this doesn't work.
How the rest of you feel?
You have a motion on that?
I make a motion.
Okay, what about second? All right. All in favor? Number 2 don't work, we'll go to number 1.
Well, that means that we could be subjected to a 2-year incompleted pavement project.
Yes, sir.
But I think, like Mr. He said, they know every day when that weather changes and it goes to messing up what's out there, and somebody gets hurt out there on that dirt road in the middle of the night in a rainstorm, they know they're gonna have to eat that too.
Well, I will say this, that we wouldn't just turn a blind eye to the project. We will ensure that the shoulders are maintained in safe condition, that the road is traversable. And what we would do is what Mr. Phil Bishop can tell you is that it would be a responsibility of ours then to track those costs And that would be included in our allegation of the full extent of our damages.
But if we go with option one, do we not lose our DOT funding?
Good, you would, because it goes past that deadline.
And he can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would expect that you could easily document that as a loss as well. That's what I was thinking as soon as y'all said that we would go with option one. I hate it because DOT gave us this much more time to try and work things out when it should have been done in September. But, you know, it's hard to stomach $300 million.
Can I tell y'all something? I don't think that you ought to jump off into option one if if option two doesn't work. I think you need to come back and discuss it before you do that. I think that's a little bit, with all due respect, I think it's a little bit rash.
Okay.
Because, let me tell you why.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. And this is not legal, this is just as a citizen of this county for my entire adult life, is y'all are gonna catch it for getting this road completed. And option one does not get the road completed. You see what I'm saying?
I got you. But I withdraw my motion then.
Okay. Second.
Got a second on that?
Second. Okay. All in favor?
And this might necessitate y'all having a special meeting.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we can do that. $300,000, I'll come back. No doubt in my mind.
Bunch of me.
I think that's, I mean, it's prudent.
You think that's prudent?
Yeah, I don't think they had to make a decision tonight on what happens if option two doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah. Option two.
We're gonna slide into second base, that's for sure.
All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dale.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back to 17? I know, Mr. Bishop gave us the rankings, so we didn't make a motion to appoint those people.
Okay, that was,
I mean, I think we usually do it that way. It was, James Reed and
Blair Beatty.
Blair Beatty were the two that were ranked the highest.
Okay, so we need a motion for that? Motion. All right, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. That's the only item you had, Mr. Bishop? Number 20 is your only item?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Item 21.
Mhm.
What we're asking is for the board to consider an approval of request for certificate of public convenience and necessity for Century Ambulance Service. This would enable, Century Ambulance Service to, possibly be added as soon as tomorrow as an additional provider to Taylor County, in order to provide support for Doctors Memorial Hospital emergency medical services. Once the contractual agreement is executed with Century, they would be identified as a sole provider of emergency, non-emergent ambulance and EMS standby services. That is outside of our helicopter transport. And the COCPN is a requirement to obtain licensure by the state of Florida.
Okay. So what do you need?
I need the board to vote to approve the certificate of public convenience and necessity.
Motion to approve.
Motion second. All in favor? So the contract has not been signed yet, right?
No, sir, and I can give a quick update on that
Okay, go ahead.
while we're discussing Century. We've started, meeting with Century weekly, to start the transition of countywide ambulance services. Conrad, I believe, spent his weekend reviewing the draft contract.
Yes, boy howdy. I reviewed it this weekend, and I've a letter has been typed out to LaWanda, and the letter is just what I've done in the past is I kind of condensed the agreement so, you don't have to, just pour over it like I did as a practical matter. And I've asked her, I read it when I got back from Chiefland this afternoon between 5 and 6, and there's one typo that I found. And it will go out tomorrow, and I've asked LaWanda to give y'all a copy of the contract and my letter, which is some corrections and so forth, for y'all to look at it, okay? I'll give you an example of it. It did have an escape clause in there, and and that was firmly, I wanted an escape clause. What I mean by a escape clause is, say for instance, you don't have enough to say that they're in default, but you just don't like them anymore, so you could give them 6 months.
It's like PGOT.
Yeah, give them 6 months to be, so they're gonna need to agree to that. Also, there's some couple of things that I didn't like about it, about increasing the $68,000 per month that we're gonna pay by 3% of the CPI. You don't want to do that. Also, the other thing is, they're wanting a 5-year, okay? And I thought we were talking more like a 3-year. Now, that might be a deal breaker though, because if they put in to come here for that and put in to do that, then they really want a 5-year. But it's a little bit of a negotiation there.
5 years, the same rate.
Well, yes, but with the 3% of the CPI, so that's another thing that you got to think about on that. Now, that's just something to think about. And there's some other things on there, but generally speaking, it's a pretty good contract. It's a pretty good contract.
Sure, their 5 years gonna be based on what kind of assets they bring in and what kind of money they're gonna.
Yeah, we'll see that. Part of it is they have 3 ambulances at all times, and a lot of things that the county doesn't have at this particular point in time, and it also didn't put in there that they were gonna, and I didn't write this in the letter, so you need to remember this. They didn't put in there that they would keep our people on. They didn't say that they wouldn't keep our people on, but that they would give them every opportunity to stay on, right? Did they say that orally to you?
It's in their proposal that they will give.
I didn't see it in the contract.
Okay.
That's why we do this, is to.
Okay. In that contract, there are some accountability clauses and fines, I guess, what I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Give them a chance to apply and see if they qualify to meet their standards, I think.
That's for the employees, I
Well, I
think.
mean, the service itself, if they don't perform the service according to the contract, then there's fines and
And just termination too.
After so many infractions.
Right, and they've got like 120 days to, determine what their time would be to get to the scene. In other words, they gotta have some time to do it before they can, give us a 10-minute or 15-minute or whatever like that.
And that's because we did not have data to provide to them.
Right.
So they're asking for 120 days to determine if our times are something that they can meet or not, which I don't think is unreasonable.
No, not at all.
And neither proposer would commit to those response times. We may ask for a special meeting because Century would like to start service on January 2nd, which is just around the corner. So I may be calling upon a chairperson for a special meeting sometime in December.
Okay.
That's why I did that this weekend.
Yes, sir, I know. Thank you.
I'm a real dull person, I'm real dull.
We need that special meeting. Could we coordinate that with the need for the other discussion? for, oh,
Yes,
God.
sir, I would think so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if the time allows, if we need to move on with ambulance service, I understand, but.
Well, I believe, we have a little bit of time before we need to, we still have some negotiations to complete with Century before we would finalize the contract and ask for a meeting, so we have a little bit of time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
21A. Board to consider approval of revised FRA grant adjustment form to begin the formal amendment. The Taylor County FRA competitors and employment of the rail cyber park.
We have Heather Pullen on the line to discuss that.
Oh, yeah, okay. What's the number?
3164.
3164.
Okay.
Number 3164, state your name, please, and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Heather Pullen with Lincoln Associates in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm the grant administrator of the Taylor County Fever Project. We have before you tonight the request for approval of a revised FRA grant adjustment form. Just to give you a little background, on October 19th of this year, the board approved the original FRA grant adjustment form for the proposed amendment of the construction, repair, and replacement of 3 additional bridge structures, as well as the installation of 3 new crossing controllers near the bridge site. On November 10th, the FRA notified us that due to the significant changes in the scope of work, we would need to undergo a substantial amendment process. Therefore, we are asking for you to consider the revised FRA grant form. It still includes the scope of work that was approved on October 19th. There are 2 additional changes, one being that we are extending the performance period of the grant project past March 17th, 2021. The new end date is anticipated to be June 30th, 2021. And we are also requesting to move $25,000 from the contingency budget line item to cover project management costs for both OmniTrack and grant administration services extended through the end of the performance period and the closeout of the project.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, is there any questions from Ms. Heather?
These, adjustments they got to do on these cross ties and stuff on these bridges, that's got to be done?
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. Yes. So the crossing controllers, there is some narratives in an attachment to the revised grant forms that was included in the agenda packet. It gives a thorough review, and they actually explain in the overview, the engineers explained that due to the fact that the rail speed is being raised from 10 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, that is the minimum that we are allowed to install.
And this will end the $16 million project we had, or was that?
Yeah, so the original project scope construction is about 99% completed. Due to some rain damage from the excessive rain that we received, the contractors were still out finishing up just a very small area where it was once flooded recently. And then once they finish that out, we'll be at 100% construction. And so the new amended project is now anticipated to go through June 30th. That is just to give us enough time to get through this amendment process, because the amendment process is set to take 45 to 60 days before the amendment comes back to the board for approval.
Mhm.
And then we will have to order materials, and right now, there's about a 90-day, 60 to 90-day delay on the shipment of materials. We're hoping that changes by the time we get to that in February. So that is the anticipated new end date, is June 30th.
Okay. Pleasure, board. What do you need from us? You need us to pass a resolution or pass? What do you need from us?
There's actually a grant adjustment form that will need to be signed by you, Chairman Dent.
Okay, all right. So do I hear a motion we do this?
I make a motion to do it.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will do that, Ms. Heather.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. Okay, we go to item 22, county administrator to discuss informational letter.
Actually, I think it's 21B.
21B.
21B, what was that?
That's what was added to the agenda.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead with that.
This is a request for the board to approve the intent to fund agreement between the Department of Financial Services and Taylor County for the construction of the new fire station.
Okay.
This is a simple form approving the legislative funding request.
Mhm.
If the board approves this, then we will receive a grant agreement for the actual project in the near future.
$580,000.
Yes, sir.
Is this for the Pisgah?
Yes, sir.
Was that, didn't it say something about a match on that?
There's a in-kind match that will be provided by staff for engineering services and grant administration is our portion of the match, plus the real estate.
They supply the property.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And the Woods Creek Road is where it's gonna be built?
The Pisgah.
Yes.
Right now, it's Pisgah, the sheriff's department's got an office off the Pisgah Road. And I think they've come up with enough room for this fire department in there.
Yes.
So there's no, issue with, I think they talked about the gas line being in the, you're running through the property, but I think they
We resolved that question.
resolved that issue as well. But there's always, like I said, if before the Swabs had offered to sell
Scott's
their,
building
Scott's Mobile,
on 221.
to purchase their location, we needed another option.
So from what I understand, I did ask if we were required to utilize the property on Pisgah Road, since that was in our earmark request. And I was told, no, it just would need to be a similar type piece of property in the same district.
Yeah, and I think that probably is the same district, I think we probably, I don't know who that person would be, maybe Dan Castle or someone, if we were to even think about moving that direction to go. It may not hurt him to go look at that building to see if it would even, can updates to it, could even be made, considered a new fire station.
I'll ask them to take a look at it.
Okay, but you need a motion now to go ahead and make this,
Yes.
push this so we can get the money.
So we can receive the grant agreement, yes.
Okay. Motion. Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
now we go to
Thank you, Don.
administrator items. You got any more items?
I do, I actually have some good news.
Okay.
Which is good at this point. An update for our CARES Act funding. Our contractor sent me a message, or a consultant, excuse me, last week. We have entered all of our documentation, our expenditures into the DEM system. We've actually entered nearly $6 million of expenses into the system. We still have a maximum award of $3.7 million, but I just wanted to update the board. We have met the time constraints to enter those expenditures in the system, so we can hopefully obtain reimbursement for all of that.
Okay.
So that is very exciting and a relief to have that entered. Also, there was a Gulf Consortium meeting last week. All 3 of our SEP amendments were approved. And there has started a 45-day public comment period that opened on December 4th. After that public comment period is over, then we can move forward with grant submissions for these projects. So that's more good news for us. It was very exciting. And lastly, I did receive an email from Danny Collins with Duke Energy. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, there will be a ribbon cutting of the Duke Energy electric vehicle charging station. It's actually located in the parking lot right catty corner from us. We can put out a notice to the public if anyone's interested in attending that ribbon cutting.
Is that electric cars, electric?
It's the charging station that they have installed.
Okay.
It's basically just right across the street from us. That's 1 o'clock tomorrow, if you're interested. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Comments and concerns from the public? Non-agenda items. Anyone from the public? Okay. Board information items. Newman? Commissioner Newman?
Just, thank staff and this commission for, looking into this issue before we cut off. I think everybody's probably been advised, there's, new needs to be met out there. And so I look forward to what Mr. Bishop finds and, Mr. Conrad Bishop, let me stipulate, with the possibility that we can maintain, the surety and move forward with that. So looking forward to that, and, we'll still so advised otherwise, say that we're moving forward, and, that's a good thing for the residents out there. It's really been what I would say, a hardship that's been described to me, and I think there's probably many folks that can check that box, but, the bottom line comes down to, what measures we can take to get this project completed as, effectively as we can with the least amount of risks. So I've been looking forward to hearing from you, Councilor, and beyond that, I'd say a great job to, Ms. LaWanda for, these, accomplishments that are on the horizon, and hearing about the Gulf Consortium and the CARES Act funding, as well what we're seeing coming past, and Mr. Bishop's weekend endeavors with the EMS service. So that's all, Councilor, and, you know, it just goes to show progress, and I'm glad to see it. So we're looking forward to that special meeting, Ms. LaWanda, and please.
I think Mr. Newman has covered it all. I'd like to add, thank our law enforcement for keeping us safe, and, appreciate everything, everybody here.
I really like the way this board handled all this stuff tonight. It's a pleasure to work with y'all, and to work with Mr. Conrad and Mr. Warren, it's a blessing. Appreciate it.
Looking, have you heard from Commissioner Siegel? How's she doing?
She's doing well.
Doing well. All right. I got a lot to talk about.
Boy.
But I think I'll do it another day. Is anything else coming before this board?
Motion adjourned. Second.
Second. You all in favor? Aye. Okay, good.
The host has ended this call. Goodbye.